record. So you should have received a disclaimer asking you to comply or leave. So if you've come back, thank you very much. We're going to get these kinks worked out and get this machine oiled to be a well-oiled machine here pretty soon. But welcome to Scrum Masters of the Universe. So hopefully everyone can see my screen, right? 3 very happy Scrum Masters are showing there. So our mission is we want to provide a place for Agile enthusiasts to learn, grow, and flourish in applying Agile in the world of work, possibly even in your personal life as well, but definitely in work. And we believe there's great value in getting out of our silos and connecting with other people who are passionate about growing as an Agile practitioner. So our name says Scrum Masters of the Universe just because it's a fun name, but you don't have to be a Scrum Master to be invited. So all are welcome here, okay? So here's our leadership team. Jamie is our fearless leader. She wasn't able to be here tonight. And Katrin lives in Germany, so it's probably about 1 o'clock in 1 a.m. in the evening or in the morning her time, so she wasn't able to make it. So I'm running this show solo. So here are us. I'll put some links for us if you want to connect with us shortly in the chat. Here's some various ways for you to connect. If you want to take a screenshot, you want to take a picture, you can. All the addresses should be pretty easy to remember, but I'll put those in the chat as well. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Meetup, and YouTube. And this is being recorded and it will be shared out on YouTube. It usually takes us a day or 2 to get that sent out, but we'll post it there with the others. I want to thank our sponsors, Agile Alliance, Agile.ai, and Scrum.org. They really do a great job of helping us, giving us some much needed resources that we need to keep this going. And without further ado, we want to welcome Murray Robinson. He's been very gracious to not only agree to speak to us, but to be put off for an hour and then come back. So appreciate his patience. Thank you all for joining with us. And Murray, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you.
All right, I'll share my screen then. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Mark. My name is Murray Robinson, and I'm going to be talking to you about Agile 2, the next iteration of Agile today. So I run a small consulting business called evolve.co. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, hence the hours. It's morning. It's 11 a.m. for me. I help myself and my colleagues help companies build valuable digital products that users love on time and budget. And Agile 2 is a coalition of independent Agile consultants, writers, and speakers who want to improve the way Agile is being done. So we have written a book which has been published by Wiley, which is called Agile 2. And the authors include Cliff Berg, Kurt Cagle, Lisa Cooney, Philippa Fuel, Adrian Lander, Raj Nagapan, who is in Melbourne with me, and me, of course. All right. So what I'm going to do in this talk is I'm going to talk about problems that we see in Agile and Scrum and the manifesto itself. Gaps, shortcomings, implementation problems, as well as like fundamental issues. And then I'm going to open it up to have a discussion with you to see if people are seeing these issues. And then I'm going to suggest, an evolution of Agile that will help us. So we're not talking about throwing out Agile. We like Agile. We just want to save it because we think it's in a lot of trouble at the moment. Okay, so let me go through some of the problems we see, and I'm probably going to be much more critical than you've ever seen before. So let's go. Why is this not changing? Oh, there we go. All right. First problem. Corporate Agile. Corporate Agile is largely fake Agile that violates the Agile values. Now, if we remember, the Agile values are that we're working together to develop a way of working that's better than what has been gone before us. And we value, change over plans, individuals and actions over processes and tools, and so on. What happens in big corporations is they implement something which pretty much violates all of those. So you get this Agile that focuses heavily on documents, processes, tools, contracts, and basically doesn't give what Agile is supposed to be doing at all. So it's a kind of a process that has minimal change. Typically, all people do is do Scrum at the team level and only within a silo, like development teams or dev test teams. There's minimal change. There's few benefits. Mostly it's water scrum fall. Now, water scrum fall is where you do waterfall, except you do it in sprints. So the business analysis team does analysis sprints, and then the design team does design sprints, and the dev team does dev sprints, and the test team does test sprints. So this approach, which I see a lot of, has all the same problems as waterfall: heavy processes and documentation, functional silos, fixed scope contracts, and tons of change requests. This is the type of Agile which is being implemented, sold, and used by the big professional services firms, Deloitte, Accenture, and so on. Now, they're not totally responsible for that. They're actually giving their clients what they want. There's a lot of managers and senior managers who want to look and sound Agile, but they don't actually want to change anything or give up any power or decentralize. In addition to this sort of corporate Agile, there's also the big Agile changes that you're seeing coming through from McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, where they come in and they do a top-down waterfall-based Agile change. They fire 20% of their staff, implement the Spotify model, implement SAFe, and does it actually help? I don't think so. I'm hearing a lot of things from people who work in those companies who say there's just a total mess afterwards, and really it's just an excuse to fire 20% of people. So that's what I'm seeing a lot in corporate Agile world. Now, I don't want to dismiss that there are people in the corporate Agile world who are trying really hard to do Agile well, and I've been one of them. And there are pockets where it's being done really well. There are local teams where they're doing Agile and Scrum really well. There's sometimes departments that are doing it very well. There's, I think the biggest organization I've ever seen that seemed to be doing Agile pretty well was about 400 people. But, it's really rare, I think, these days. So a lot of it is Agile in name only. Okay, let's talk about SAFe. I think SAFe violates most of the Agile values to start with, because again, it's heavily focused on processes. It's heavily focused on program increment planning, commitments, and then delivery. So at least it does have 3-month program increments. So you're getting things delivered every 3 months, but it is actually like a big, heavy train. It's a big engineering-focused industrial thing that's going down the track, delivering things, but not in a very agile way. It's quite inflexible. Program increments, in my experience, are generally fixed scope. It's supposed to be flexibility, but people just don't do it that way. Typically, the teams at the local level that are, the Scrum teams, if you call them Scrum, just feature factories. The Scrum Masters are disempowered. Their retrospectives are lackluster or don't happen, and their product owners are very disempowered at the local level. So they're very output focused, feature factories. Teams are powerless. There tends to be little improvement, very top down, but there's a lot of money to be made from it in certification and training. And I suppose the good thing about SAFE from a trainer's point of view is that it's really opened up a big new opportunity to make money because Scrum has been, very much a tightly controlled closed shop. But, the SAFE I've seen hasn't been good. And I've seen, I had some exposure to the Telstra EDW project, which was one of the precursors of SAFE and one of the very first teams to implement PI planning. And, there was something really wrong with it from first time I saw it. That's not to say that you can't do SAFE in an agile way. If you have an agile mindset and your managers have an agile mindset and, everybody does, then you actually can take what SAFE does and do it in a much more agile way. It's just that it doesn't seem to me to be set up for it. People just don't do it that way. All right, Scrum itself.
Have you seen?
Scrum has quite a lot of problems fundamentally. I mean, I really like Scrum. I use Scrum. I advocate Scrum. I teach Scrum in my courses, but it does have some problems. One is that it's process focused. And remember, it's supposed to be individuals and interactions over processes. And yet Scrum is a process. I know we call it a process framework, but even so, it's a process in itself. There's this idea that we can do twice the work in half the time, which came from Jeff Sutherland. That's not what Agile is supposed to be about. Agile is not supposed to be about efficiency. It's supposed to be about delivering value to our customers and users. If it said twice the value in half the time, that might be better. Scrum produces batches and crunches. You'll all have experienced this, that at the end of a sprint, people are working late, working hard. Things get finished at the last minute. Things get presented to product owners in the sprint review to say, can you approve this, when they haven't had any chance to look at it before. If you compare it to Kanban, it causes a lot of batches and crunches and quality problems at the end of sprints. Typically in Scrum, the product owner is overwhelmed and blocks progress because one person doesn't seem to be able to be enough to do everything the Scrum team needs. There's frequently, I was going to say they block customer contact. So a Scrum team typically doesn't talk to real customers because everything goes through the product owner, which I think is a problem. It's not really the way it's supposed to be. It strongly encourages short-term thinking. So there's a real problem with the lack of architecture, design, and so on at the higher level with Scrum teams because it's very focused on the short term. You get something called dark Scrum, which Ron Jeffries has talked about a lot, which is Scrum teams get turned into this nightmarish factory from a developer's point of view, where everyone's sprinting constantly. This is caused the developer backlash. There's a lot of backlash against Scrum in various online communities. There's a real big problem with the idea that Scrum is immutable. If you change Scrum, then you're not doing Scrum. But interestingly, you'll notice that Scrum has a centralized authority where Jeff and Ken and their cohorts are allowed to change the Scrum rules and nobody else is. I think this immutability idea prevents you from, improving away from Scrum. There are quite a lot of dogmatic Scrum coaches out there. There is a lot of lovely Scrum people that I know. I've been involved in the Scrum community here. A lot of great people, but there's also some really dogmatic gurus, and you'll find them all over the place. I have worked with quite a few authoritarian Scrum Masters. I think these are people who were authoritarian project managers who went and got Scrum certified, and they've just having the same behavior, but now they're doing Scrum. There's a lot of non-technical Scrum masters who don't understand the issues that the development teams are having and therefore just ignore them. And that causes a lot of problems. So you get this non-technical Agile. And the Scrum Alliance itself is anti-competitive and tries very hard to prevent people from becoming trainers. It's really difficult to become a Scrum Alliance trainer. So luckily Scrum Org has made things easier, but those are some of the, so I like Scrum, but there's still quite a lot of problems with it. It's only really a part of the solution. I would say Scrum is 20% of Agile, and there's lots of good bits and a few problems which you need to deal with. Overall, the Agile Manifesto itself has some core problems. I mean, it was really good at the time, and still a lot of value in it, I think. But the problem is that it's focused on self-organizing software teams working face-to-face to deliver business value. Okay, so you'll notice here that there's this language in the Agile Alliance, which is about business and technical teams. They didn't envisage at the time that there would be one team, a product team, really. They keep thinking about business and technical. And the idea was to bring business and technical people together. That's good, but it has an order-taking mindset to it. There's this assumption that the business people will tell us what customers want and we will build it. I don't think that's actually right at all. It ignores a lot of stuff as well. It ignores products. It doesn't talk about products at all. It ignores organizations. It's really totally focused on the team level. It ignores leaders. What role do leaders have? It just kind of ignores it. Individuals. It ignores individuals and their needs. Again, it's team focused. It ignores architecture and data and remote working. In fact, it says that face-to-face is the best way to do things, and we're discovering that that's maybe not so true. A lot of good stuff in there, but since it succeeded, we've seen this agile industrial complex develop where a lot of people are making money out of it and they're turning it into something that these guys didn't think it would be. So Scrum and SAFe took over. Agile is not Scrum and it's not SAFe. It's far more than that. It's XP, it's DevOps, it's all sorts of things like that. And we get this problem where you've got all these lightweight Agile life coaches now in the community. People have come in from the executive coaching community, non-technical people, and there's all this focus on psychology and individual psychology now, which is really something that's come out of the life coaching community because these people can see it's a way to make money. So these are the sort of problems I'm seeing. Now, a lot of people are searching for a better way, not just us, but I wanted to open it up for a little bit and ask people, are they seeing these sort of problems in, out there when they're working with in corporates or agile teams?
So I'll just say, Murray, definitely see product owners that aren't empowered, that are more order taking.
I'm finding it really hard to hear you.
Let's see. Is that any better?
Am I the only one who's having trouble hearing Mark?
Mark, I hear you okay.
All right, well, keep going then, Mark. I'll turn my volume up. Go ahead.
Okay. Hopefully things have gotten better. I'm not sure. I hear a couple people saying they can hear me, but so Murray, just for me, one of the things that I see is that product owners really aren't empowered to make decisions. Many times they have at the executive level, some of those decisions for the product are being made and pushed down, and the product owner really is the proxy to the team to kind of explain what the priorities are.
Yeah, sure. Yep, that's definitely one problem. Anyone else see any of these problems I've been talking about here?
I'm my own boss, so I can do things the way I want to.
Okay, well, that's good.
I can see that there's gonna be a problem, like because our place are still doing waterfall and I'm studying, like when I know about Agile, I learned this Scrum, like a bunch of new terminology that we don't use at work. But since I know more about it, I can see that each of the methodology will have a problem that if we don't do it the right way, it's gonna be bad.
Yep.
You see issues around business value, questions about, what is it? How do you define it? Why do we got to do it? It's almost absent from what I see.
Yeah, often the case.
I haven't seen it myself, but I've heard from others that some of the Scrum teams are rewriting user stories to deliver what they feel like delivering because they don't really understand that the business isn't there to serve them, that they're there to serve the business.
Yeah, and also there must be a real difference between the business and the Scrum teams in that situation. They must not be thinking of themselves as one team and, having the business and technical people working together if there's this idea that they can rewrite it to serve themselves.
I have a question. Why is the order taking mindset is listed here as a Agile Manifesto problem? Can you give some example, please?
Well, because the Agile Manifesto assumes that we are in its principles that the business is telling the technical people what needs to be developed. And you can see this in Scrum as well. The product owner represents the business and the Scrum team is the development team. And the business people are telling the development people what the customers need. That's an order taking mindset. That's I will do what you want, Mr. Product Owner.
Is that a difference, Murray, in understanding the problem as opposed to explaining how the problem needs to be solved?
Well, imagine an alternative where you've got a product owner, a user experience designer, and say a BA, some software developers, some testers, and they're all working together in one team. And you can call them all developers from a Scrum point of view, except for the product owner. But imagine you've got all these people working together, and they are deciding together what is valuable. They're talking to customers together. The developers are talking to customers if they want to. They're talking to users. They're coming up with hypotheses. They're putting things out in the market really quickly. They're testing them. They're getting feedback. They're deciding together what the product should be, like a startup. Imagine a startup would do that. So a situation I'm talking about where the engineers and other people in the team can all contribute to the idea of what might be valuable and what they should try and do next from a value point of view, not just the product owner. I think that's Agile, what Agile really, it wasn't quite what they said. They didn't really think about it that way, but I think that is something that Agile should be. Shall I go on? I'm not hearing more discussion. All right, so I'll go on. So there are a lot of people currently trying to find a better way of doing things. As DevOps was the first one. Clearly, I remember seeing the launch of DevOps at Agile Australia in 2010 with the book Continuous Delivery by Jesse Phil and Dave Farley and Jez Humble. And they saw themselves as being part of the Agile movement. They just were trying to bring it back to the technical side of things. They wanted to focus on technical agility, but increasingly DevOps has seen Scrum as being a problem for them, that Scrum has made Agile into this non-technical thing. And so they've gone off, pretty much separated out now and become a very technically focused form of agility. But I still think it's what Agile was supposed to be. If you look at XP and things like that, there's the software craftsmanship movement, again, very focused on technical agility. Kanban, even though Dave Anderson says Kanban is not part of Agile, it was developed under a Agile movement, and a lot of people in pro Kanban and others see it as being part of Agile as an alternative to Scrum or to be done with Scrum. There's the heart of Agile from Alistair Coburn. He's really tried to boil Agile down to, just like its real core as agnostic Agile group of people who are basically saying, look, there's a lot of good things from all the different methodologies. We have to get away from these religious and cultural wars. Team topologies is really a scaling framework. This is pretty new, but it's good. A lot of talking about a lot of good ideas about how to structure Agile teams in 1,000+ person organizations, product teams and service teams and platform teams and so on. Team flow, that's pretty new, from Steve Tendon. Disciplined Agile delivery, which I like, actually, that's come out of Scott Ambler. And the PMI. Disciplined Agile delivery is actually just gives you like a big recipe book that you can choose different methods from for different parts of your process. There's lean startup. That's another alternative to, standard Agile, focused on startups. Really good stuff there. And Agile 2, which is what we're doing. So I'll talk about Agile 2 now. So lots of people see a big problem in Agile communities. There's been quite a few of some of the founders of Agile have come out and said Agile's dead. We don't want to give up on Agile completely. We want to just revamp it based on what we've seen working really. So we want to restore balance to Agile with a focus on thoughtfulness and prescription, outcomes and outputs, individuals and teams, business and technical understanding, individual empowerment and good leadership, and adaptability and planning. Remember, Agile values were written as, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, but there's still value in processes and tools. And sometimes people forget that. So one of our core ideas is balance on these kind of values. So then you can divide what we've done up into groups of principles. So our first group is product principles. Now remember, product really doesn't appear in the Agile Manifesto. but it needs its attention. So we've said any initiative requires both a vision or goal and a flexible, steerable, outcome-oriented plan. Product design must be integrated with product implementation. We obtain feedback from the market and stakeholders continuously. We validate ideas through small contained experiments. We carefully gather and analyze data for product validation. The only proof of value is a business outcome. Product development is mostly a learning journey, not merely an implementation. And those offering products and services should feel accountable to their customers for the impact of defects. So a real product focus. Then there's a focus on leadership. So change must come from the top as well as the bottom, I would say. But if it doesn't come from the top, it's going to get stamped out really quickly. The most impactful success factor is the leadership paradigm that the organization exhibits and incentivizes. So culture comes from leaders and people follow them, follow their behavior. We think we should be providing leadership who can both empower individuals and teams and set direction when needed. Good leaders are open, leadership models scale, leaders foster collaboration between teams through shared objectives, and organizational models for structure and leadership should evolve. So there's no such thing as implementing the Spotify model and then you're done, or implementing SAFe and then you're done. What we should be doing is trying things and evolving them for our organization and our situation. And again, there's really a lot of people are talking about these sort of things, but there's nothing really about leadership in the Agile Manifesto or Scrum. Organizational principles. This is another thing. We need to talk about the organization, not just the team. We think you should fit an Agile framework to your work, your culture, and your circumstances. Any significant transformation is mostly a learning journey, not a one-off process change. Self-organizational autonomy are aspirations and are good things, but they do require some capability, and there may be capability building required before people can be fully autonomous. Organizations need an inception framework tailored to their needs to form teams and get budgets. And different Agile certifications have unequal value and require scrutiny. So, and I've got the pictures here of different types of team structures from the Teams book, Team Topologies. Really worth reading if you're working with big organizations. Technical principles. So, it just amazes me that a lot of Agile and Scrum people have forgotten about the technical side of agility and just don't talk about it. That was such an important part at the beginning. Technical agility and business agility are inseparable. One cannot understand one without also understanding the other. Business leaders must understand how products and services are built and delivered. Technology delivery leadership must understand technology delivery. Technology delivery leadership and teams need to understand the business, and an organization's information model is strategic. So data has strategic value. So there needs to be a technical focus, not just a team and process focus to Agile as well. I hope you're all listening to this and going, yeah, that's all sensible, because a lot of people are talking about it. We're just, as I said, it's a group of very experienced people who are trying to bring the best ideas together to make Agile better. So at the team level, team principles, we favor mostly autonomous end-to-end delivery teams whose teams have authority to act. End-to-end means, they have everybody in there, from the product people and the design people all the way through to development and testing and marketing as well, whatever you need to deliver products. We favor long-lived teams and turn their expertise into competitive advantage. A team often needs more than one leader, each of a different kind. The whole team solves the whole problem. We work iteratively in small batches. We don't fully commit capacity. We place limits on things that cause drag. We integrate early and often, and from time to time we reflect and then enact change. So a lot of the agile principles are turning up here under teams, but mixed with some Kanban and product ideas. And individual principles. We feel that individuals have been, and their needs have been forgotten, particularly by Scrum. So individuals matter just as much as the team matters. Both specialists and generalists are valuable. We foster diversity of communication and diversity of working style. We respect cognitive flow. We make it easy for people to engage in uninterrupted, focused work. We foster deep exchanges. We create documentation to share and deepen understanding where necessary. And professional development of individuals is essential. That is Agile 2 in a nutshell. Let me open it up. I see Peak has their hand up. So Peak.
Yeah, can you elaborate on respect cognitive flow?
All right. So if you're a software developer, generally the problems you're dealing with are actually really difficult and complex, and you need to be able to get deeply into them, spend a few hours focused on those problems, trying to solve them before you can talk to somebody else. So let's say you need to work in probably 3-hour blocks. It could be the same for people who are writing or anyone doing anything really complex. But the problem is that people doing that sort of work are being constantly interrupted by non-technical people who want to talk to them, raise issues, tell jokes, have meetings. And we are not, and that makes it much harder for those people to do their work. So we need to respect the idea that people who are doing engineering work in particular, or design work in teams, need time to really focus and get deeply into the problem without interruption. And too many of our teams are all focused about, everybody needs to communicate all the time. No, they don't. They need periods of strong focus at times.
Thank you.
Other questions from people? And last time I presented this, the feedback I got was, well, this is remarkably uncontroversial. Isn't this just what people are doing if they're sensible? And, yeah, it is, but it's not what it says in the Agile Manifesto or the Scrum Guide.
Hi, Murray.
One of the things, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd actually like to get a little bit of clarity on something. I understand everything that you're saying about the developers needing to be able to have very focused time to be able to work on what they're doing. I'm just wondering about what your thoughts are regarding things like the daily stand-up, because a lot of what works with an agile team is when you're able to foster a better relationship with the team. But I definitely understand why developers sometimes feel that's a little bit too touchy-feely for them. Just wondering what your thoughts are on the daily stand-up.
Look, I really like the daily stand-up if it's done in 15 minutes and if it's focused on identifying blockers so you can help to remove them. I think it's really great. But if it's valuable, the team should see the value and should want to do it. And if the team doesn't want to do it, then there's something wrong going on there. Perhaps the Scrum Master is dictating it. Perhaps it's boring and dull. Perhaps it goes for 45 minutes. These are it should be there to help the team more effective. And it's not the Scrum Master alone who can determine that. It's the team themselves. So let's say that you have a retrospective. I would want a retrospective to be able to say, we don't like the daily stand-up, right? Now, if you're a Scrum Master and you have a retrospective that says, where people say, we're not happy with the stand-up, then you would say, well, that's out of scope because that's just core to Scrum, right? But you should be able to say, okay, that's fine. Let's have a look at it and see if we can do something better or different. What is really the issue here? Well, the issue is that it goes for 45 minutes and I'm really bored. Okay, well, what can we do to make it much more valuable for you and to go for a shorter period of time? Let the team or encourage the team to discuss these things and find better ways of doing it. Maybe do it every second day or take turns or something. If they don't like it, discuss it and work out how to do it better amongst yourselves. And maybe one team does like it and another team doesn't. They should be able to, why does everybody have to do exactly the same thing? Work out what's best for you.
Cool, thanks.
What about, we're just focusing on individuals. What about leadership? Because I see leadership being ignored in Scrum deliberately, I would say. And, in Agile too, the Agile Manifesto to a large degree. And yet I see leaders being the ones who either make or break your Agile implementation, and frequently they're undermining it and destroying it.
I'm curious to hear your maybe some deeper thoughts or just some explanation on the scaling of leadership models, Murray.
Well, maybe that's more about the organizational principles, Mark. What do you think?
I can see that.
I mean, I have been an executive. And middle management manager. I've done a lot of management and leadership, and I would say there's not much difference between managing or leading, 5 people who each have direct reports and, 5,000. I think that what happens in organizations is that leaders define what's rewarded and what's punished by their behavior. And people are very attuned to that, and then they start following that. So if, for instance, flattery is rewarded and talking about the elephant in the room is punished, then people will start flattering and stop talking about the elephant in the room. So good leadership practices are the same all the way up. So my view is that a good leader is a servant leader, that they are inspiring, that they empower, but, they make it clear. A leader is supposed to be an integrator, they're supposed to represent people and help the group achieve its goals, but they're looking at the big picture, not just by themselves, but, a good leader is a visionary, but they have a vision that people support. Leadership is often actually an emotional job. It's often emotional labor as well as organization. So that the kind of behavior we're talking about scales, and then the models we use are things like this: having product teams, enabling teams, platform teams, and so on. other questions from people? What do we think? Does this all sound good?
Actually, one more. In one of the very first slide where you mentioned they fire 20% of the staff.
Yeah.
What would that happen? Why would that happen?
So they can make more money.
Okay.
Staff as a cost, you've got revenue, selling things to your customers. In many organizations, in service organizations, staff are the main cost. So imagine that you're in a bank or imagine you're the CEO of a bank or a telephone company, mobile phone company, and you aren't making much profit and you haven't got much growth, right? Your board is going to start talking to the press about getting rid of you, and they're going to start complaining to you and telling you that you're not doing a good enough job, you're not meeting expectations of their shareholders. So you realize that if you don't increase profit substantially and quickly, you're going to get fired, right? So you go talk to the big management consulting firms, McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, and the others, and you say, how can I make more profit? How can I squeeze more profit out of this business? And they say, you should do an agile transformation because it will allow you to get rid of a lot of people that you don't need, because you have all these empowered self-managing teams. They don't need as many managers as before. So you can fire a lot of managers, cut a lot of costs, and boom, overnight, your profit goes up 20% and you're a hero. So we'll come in and we know all about that. We've done it many times before. We're the experts. We're going to implement SAFe and the Spotify model. We will design a new organizational structure, and we'll make everybody reapply for their jobs, and only 88 out of 10 people will get a job in the new structure.
Okay.
That's how it works.
I see. Okay.
It's all very top down as well.
Thank you for the history behind that.
Well, it's only something that's been happening for about the last 4 or 5 years since the management consulting companies have discovered Agile. They've always had what's called a cost out practice. That's always been one of their major streams, is just to find ways of helping companies cut costs. They used to do it through business process re-engineering, basically, I think was the main thing. Now Agile is the way to do it. Any more questions?
Hi, this is Lauren. I agree with you that yes, there are leaders, we need leadership at the top, but I also think we need it at whatever level, and that the leaders aren't necessarily people who are designated as leaders. They may not be the manager in air quotes, but I would love to hear you talk more about that and how that fits into Agile 2.
Well, yes, I agree with you, Lauren. Everybody can be a leader, and if you see a problem in your team or your organization, you should step up and say something and do something. But we have to recognize that there is power and power structures in organizations, and somebody who doesn't have any power and tries to be a leader is going to have a difficult time. And whether they're right or wrong, whether their contribution is valuable or not, they're likely to be squashed by somebody in the hierarchy who does have power because they're a threat to them. So while we strongly advocate servant leadership, visionary and enabling leadership, we recognize that there is a power structure within organizations. And if people higher up in the organization don't support a new Agile way of working, then you won't get it. You're just going to get Agile in name only. I've seen many times where where teams have tried to do Scrum or Agile, and first thing you have to get permission from your local managers. And let's say you do that, but if you start working from the bottom up, pretty soon you're going to come across a leader who can crush what you're doing, and they will. Or what's more likely these days, they will make sure that nothing really changes at their level. And so you get this fake Agile where the Scrum is being done in the software development team, and that's it. Nothing else has changed.
I think I've seen variations on that where it's like, yes, we're doing Agile, we're doing Scrum without fully understanding it. But I think the actual changes that can come about become threatening. And so any words of encouragement on how to have a different outcome would be very much appreciated.
To really do a successful Agile transformation, you need an inspiring leader with power, somebody who is bought into the idea of servant leadership. I have seen that happen. I've done it myself when I was, managing groups of people, because I believed in it and I knew it would work and I knew it would help the organization be more successful. I've seen a CEO of the digital arm of a company become the CEO of the whole company and then implement this approach successfully. So it can be done. I think that the Spotify model is actually really helpful. Not everybody agrees with this, but basically the Spotify model is just a matrix organizational model. So what I've seen work well is you take, say, the architecture team and the architecture manager, and you say the architects are now going to be distributed amongst all of the teams, and you as the architecture manager are going to become a capability and people manager to support the architects distributed amongst the teams. But you won't tell them what to do on a day-to-day basis. You won't manage gates or architecture jobs. The teams will do that amongst themselves. Your job now as a functional manager is people management and capability building. And that actually works really nicely because that's missing from Scrum and Agile largely. But this idea that you take your functional managers and you change their role from directing the work to supporting and encouraging the work. I've done that, and it's a really good approach. The other approach, which is not threatening, there's two other approaches I know of that are quite helpful. Kanban says start with where you are and then improve together as a team by visualizing your work, seeing the blockers and bottlenecks, and then making improvements. Now, that's obviously much less threatening than coming in and doing a big Agile transformation or suddenly implementing Scrum everywhere. If you do that and you have, what Scrum is, you might eventually decide to implement a version of Scrum, but it's a really nice place to start. The other idea is this idea of called open leadership or open space agility, which is that you, instead of imposing change from the top, you open a space for change and you invite people in to look at how to change in bigger groups. So that's all nice, but I think if you don't have support from the people up top, then you're just going to get this fake process focused type of agility. And what is going to motivate those people at the top? Well, probably they're going to be motivated by a crisis. The company or organization needs to change. They're facing serious threats. They're not achieving their goals. They're not achieving their revenue. They're losing money. They have to change. And when people know that they have to change, you can offer them this approach as a way of improving and changing.
As long as there's enough time for them to commit to that change. Otherwise, you just end up with a lot of panicky people.
Well, it's true, but I think you can get positive change very quickly with Agile. So I was asked to join a digital agency a few years ago as a delivery leader of about a third of the organization. And after I joined, the CEO said to me, I can't tell anybody else this, but your business unit is losing a lot of money and we're going to have to close it down in 6 months unless you turn it around. So that's what you have to do, right? And so, plus we think Agile is the way to go because we've been doing Agile, and the only teams we can see that are being successful and profitable are the ones that are using Agile. Like there was one team, all the rest were breaking even or one profitable. And he said to me, look, I think it's the project managers and probably you need to change them all. So I worked with people. I spent a lot of time with customers and teams, and I had organizational retrospectives, what's working well as across our whole division, what's not. And, I suggested things. I reorganized people into cross-functional product-focused teams. I renegotiated scope with customers. I moved to a flexible scope model, fixed time, fixed cost, flexible scope, varying sprint by sprint, use Scrum. And within 6 months, we had changed from losing a lot of money to breaking even. And then after that, we just started making money consistently. So 6 months is all it took. And in fact, I found that the core reason that we were losing money in the first place was because the sales team was selling everything at cost or below cost in order to meet their sales targets. And so the core way out of it was moving to Agile contracts, teaching our customers how they can get benefit from Agile and in a more Agile way of working. And also to make sure that salespeople didn't set prices anymore, that it was set collaboratively with the development team. But it took 6 months to go from losing a lot of money to breaking even and saving everybody's job. And from there, we grew quite a lot and made quite a lot of money. So I don't think it actually takes that long. That's what I'm saying. Thoughts, questions? Do we think that this is a good approach? Would you support this approach?
Hello, I'm Ashwini.
Yeah.
As per Agile tool, so what you're going to tell about a team form? So OLR should be there in a team as considered as Agile tool in a one team.
Sure. So I'm having a bit of trouble understanding you, but I think what you're saying, what do you need to consider that your team is Agile, is following Agile too?
No, as Agile second or two, in a Scrum, there will be all product owner, Scrum master, developer, all the testers. So combined one team will be there. In the same way, is there any other different format or the same format will be there to follow this principle?
Oh, so what we're saying is that you need product-focused teams, cross-functional product-focused teams, not development teams that are focused on delivering features according to a schedule, but cross-functional product-focused teams focused on delivering value to customers as quickly as possible. That those teams need a lot of support and empowerment from leaders who are on board and willing to foster collaboration and support them. And that in bigger organizations, you need to tailor your structure. So a good team is really only maybe say 10 people. It starts to get unwieldy after that. So you need a structure to do things with multiple teams. Let's say you got 5,000 people like Spotify or somebody else. Or I don't know how many Facebook's got now, tons. We'd recommend having teams that are focused on different parts of the product. And then there's going to need to be enabling teams and platform teams and sometimes complicated subsystem teams. But teams should focus on meeting the needs of their customer, and sometimes those customers are internal. Yep. Does that answer
Thank
your
you.
question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? I'm not hearing any strong objections. So I'm hearing that, I mean, you could do this with Scrum. This is not anti-Scrum. It's just saying Scrum isn't enough. Any other thoughts, things people want to discuss?
I've got a question I've been patient or impatiently waiting to ask you, Murray, depending on how you look at it.
Yes.
So have you seen SAFe implemented in an agile manner? Have you seen that in practice?
No, never. I have tried. I was a agile coach on a SAFe team. I am a SAFe certified practitioner. I've been through the training and got the stamp. And I've run PI planning. But God, I was horrified by what this program was doing. You know, I try very hard to be optimistic in situations like that. You're there to help, right? You're not there to impose your ideal agile framework on people. So I tried to help them, but as much as I could. But it was horrible. They weren't doing retrospectives, or when they were doing them, they weren't doing real ones, or people were just like giving up. And there was a lot of chaos and resentment and, you know, a lot of dictatorial behavior from the top down. And, you know, a lot of churn. They weren't achieving their own goals anyway. It was just a real mess. So, you know, I did help them implement some better ways of working, which people appreciated. But I haven't really seen it being done in a way that I would say is agile. However, I have talked to some consultants who specialize in this area. So Michael Kusters in Germany is a very experienced agile coach who does a lot of work in the SAFe area. And he says that you can treat SAFe like a collection of tools and techniques and choose the ones that you like. But personally, I find that PI planning drives a lot of the bad behavior because it's quarterly planning, basically. You spend a couple of months preparing for the PI plan, then you have it, you ask people to commit to it. And, you know, you've got 100 people in a room, you're asking them to commit to a plan. And then, you know, managers expect that that's going to be delivered. So that just sounds a lot like contract negotiation, fixed scope. You know, it's very process focused. There's a lot of acceptance of dependencies. I argue with people online that I don't think SAFe actually is agile. It's not waterfall, but I don't think it's really agile either. It's something else. It came out of the RUP community. So, you know, but apparently you can, some people are doing it in an agile way. I ran a survey recently and asked people, how often are you delivering into production in your SAFe team? And some people said they're doing it daily or fortnightly. So, you know, a significant number, like 30%. So I think those teams are doing DevOps from just quizzing them. So it's possible to do DevOps and SAFe and kind of a cut down version of Scrum. That's my thoughts. As a certified SAFe practitioner, 4.6 Mark. I'm out of date now. Any other questions from people? No? All right. So couple of things. My company does an agile health check. We will come in and over 2 days, we will discuss your situation, facilitate some retrospectives with your teams, identify problems, and present findings with recommendations based on Agile 2 principles. I also do coaching and training, and I have a podcast called the No Nonsense Agile Podcast, where a colleague and I, who are both very experienced, get together and talk about software development, product development, agile, and a lot of those sorts of things. You'll find it on Spotify and iTunes and everywhere, really, as far as I know. So the No Nonsense Agile Podcast, I recommend you go and look at it. And also you can follow me on LinkedIn. I talk daily on there, even though I'm very frustrated with LinkedIn at the moment. I will still post frequently. If anybody knows of a better way to build a community than LinkedIn, I would like to know, because it's not good. But anyway, so there we go. Some places where you can follow me and learn more. There's also the Agile 2 website, agile2.net. I urge you to go and have a look. There's a lot of background there. Talks about how we came up with these ideas and so on. Yeah, so there you go. At the moment, there's no courses or certifications or anything in Agile 2. Maybe there will be, I don't know. It's pretty new.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yes, we do.
When you talk about business and technology need to work together, how do you see good teams or good organizations bridge those two things and connect technology and business?
Well, one way is to have a team structure like this that I'm showing on this page, where you have the business and the technical people are all part of the same team. You don't have separate teams. You don't have a business team and a technical team. There's just a product team that includes business and technical people working together every day on a part of the product. That's the easy way to solve it. And then that technical team is focused on the customer or the user. So they should be talking to real customers and users, every sprint. So I would say, get real customers and users, pay them if you have to come in and, tell you what they think about what you're doing. Do that every sprint, and invite everybody in the team to come. If they don't want to, that's fine. Developers like to develop generally, but everybody should be invited to come and watch what happens when real customers and users use the software you've been building for them, or try the prototypes that you're coming up with. So exposure to real customers and users, everybody works in one team, product focused. The engineering manager becomes, a servant leader, not a dictator. Does that answer your question? It's a good question, by the way.
Thank you. Well, it does. How do you address technical people's kind of resistance to say, I'm not interested in the business, I don't need to know this? Because I do believe once they have incorporated a business thinking and understood the business models, the teams benefit from it. But I feel there's a lot of resistance for technical people to dive into the business side of things.
Well, technical people want to focus on doing what they're good at. And as I said, they are annoyed by constant meetings and constant interruptions, because the work that they do does require deep technical focus, right? But many of them also will have very strong opinions about the business and customers and so on. If you ask them, technical people are really smart people, and they can be really creative as well. Many of them are. You'll find many developers are musicians, for instance. So, just invite them. Don't make them. Just make the make the business people part of the team so that when the team is meeting and discussing what they're going to do next, there's a designer there and there's a product manager there as well as the technical people. You know, and then have those in your sprint reviews, have your stakeholders talking about why you're doing this and what the goal is. You can use an approach called objectives and key results to help people understand, you know, the bigger picture. So that's kind of more of a leadership team, but it can come down to the team level of, we're doing this because here's the reason. You know, we've got this problem we're trying to solve, and so therefore here's our outcome we're trying to achieve. Not features, but, you know, improving customer satisfaction or addressing this, building this feature that customers have said they want. Just make the whole discussion, you know, value focused and outcome focused and customer focused, and expose people to customers. And I think, you know, just over time, they will, once they realize that they're allowed to have an opinion on what the product features should be, I think that they are going to start to get engaged.
Yeah, about that permission, that's very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great stuff, Mary. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, what do you think, Mark? More questions, or shall we wrap it up?
I actually have a couple questions.
Go on then. Yeah, let's do it.
So building on Gregor's question, because I'm a former developer, that's the background I come from. And it's very easy as a developer to get entranced in the technical puzzles to try to solve. And many times the let's see, what would the customers or the users grow very weary of these very technical conversations about the problems. And so that it presents kind of a where the business people and the technical people aren't speaking the same language.
Yeah.
And that's where sometimes I've seen the business people say, this is a waste of my time for us to sit here and discuss ad nauseum how to implement some part of a framework, some JavaScript framework, and why we have to work around certain things. And any thoughts there on, because it seems like there has to be a balance between the communication and when those are done.
Sure. So I don't think that the you know, business people or the product manager and designers need to be in discussions about Java frameworks, but what they need to know is, what are the implications? I'm a former developer as well. That's what I was at the start of my career. Business people don't understand what the implications are, and it largely comes out in estimates. So, and times and complexities and what you can do and can't do. So technical people can have those discussions, but from a product manager's point of view, what you need to know is, this thing that you asked for is actually difficult technically and is going to require a lot of work. And so you need to understand that if you're going to prioritize it, is it worth, you know, all this time and effort to do this? And maybe the technical people can come up with a different option. You know, if we made a slight change to the user process here, actually, it would only take a quarter of as much effort to build. So what if we did that? I see that happening and being valuable at all levels. Let's say you've got, you have that discussion when you're doing estimating and planning of your sprint or of your next set of work. And then let's say developer starts to try and build a user story or a feature. And as they're going through, they realize that, you know, it's been written with certain technical assumptions. They should be able to say to the user experience designer or the product manager, hey, why have you said this? Because if I if I didn't have to do it exactly this way, if I could do it this other way, I could do it much quicker. I mean, are you okay with that? So there should be like that kind of level of dialogue, not JavaScript frameworks. But if you want this feature done in this way, it's going to take this much time and effort. But here's another alternative world if we did it this way instead. Those are the sort of discussions business and technical people should have a lot of.
And so what I've seen is, you list tech lead here, the really good tech leads that I've worked with, those are the ones that can bridge those conversations to be able to explain things in a way that the business people can understand.
Yeah, business analysts are also very good at this. And remember, one of our principles, we talked about our principles were, we want our business leaders to understand how products and services are built and delivered. We need, as technical people, we need to educate them. This is the process we go through. You don't need to know all about the ins and outs of this version of Java versus this one, or JavaScript or Java framework, React versus Angular. Don't worry about that. Just let me tell you that our recommendation is we do it in Angular because of blah de blah, and really they shouldn't care, but they should understand the process you go through, and so therefore we should educate them. But then we want the technical people to understand the business as well. Did you have another question, Mark?
So back on your slide where you got the team.
Yeah.
So I assume this is representative of a single team. And I'll be honest, most of the teams I've worked with have a singular tech lead. I see you have 2 tech leads listed in a team.
Well, that's just optional, and you probably only need one. But I mean, you could have as many. One of our principles is that you have as many leaders as you need, really. I mean, I haven't got Scrum Master here. I've got Agile lead. And the idea here is that this is somebody who helps the team or leads the process. You could have a tech lead that leads one part of you could have a front-end tech lead and a back-end tech lead if you wanted to. It's up to you.
Oh, sweet.
Your product owner is a product lead. What is a leader? A leader in this situation is somebody who has a lot of experience, who can mentor and coach other people, and who can carry technical conversations or conversations on behalf of the team without everybody having to be there.
Gotcha.
Anything else? Okay, well, it sounds like we might be done. What do you think, Mark? Does it sound good to you?
Yeah, sounds good to me. So I've shared your company website, your podcast, your LinkedIn profile. Can't thank you enough, Murray, for presenting this to us. And so agile2.net, that's where we can go to get some more deeper information on Agile 2, right?
Yes, there's also an Agile 2 LinkedIn group you could join if you want to talk to other people about it.
Nice. Great.
All right.
All
Good. Well,
right.
thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Mark.
All right.
That's
Well,
been interesting for people.
Despite all the mishaps, we actually were able to have this, and thought it was a good discussion. And thank you for your time. Thank you for letting us record it. One question for you, Murray, the slides, do you permit
Yes.
those to be shared as well?
Of course, yes. I'll
Okay.
send them to you.
Great. So I'll distribute that along with the recording. All right. Well, it's been a great evening. Murray, thank you again so much. Appreciate everybody joining, and we will see you next time. Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Mary.
guys.
Thank you, Mark.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Much
bye.
appreciated. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.